Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to talk about the best technique for winter bass fishing when that water is very cold. Up here we're about to freeze, but this is a technique that's working right now if you want to go out and still fish. In the south, as that water starts to get colder and those fish get less active, this is a technique that's going to play more and more throughout the winter if you can fish the whole winter. So we're going to talk about it. It's the jerkbait. It's an excellent technique to catch a ton of fish, and hopefully we can offer you a ton of tips so you'll be catching more fish in no time. So stay tuned and let's get right into it. So why is the jerkbait such an excellent bait for winter bass fishing? It's because you can vary your retrieve. I love baits in the winter that you can vary your retrieve and they still work exactly the same. And what do I mean by that? So the jerkbait, you can fish this very quickly. If the water's warm, you can go with a shallow jerkbait like this guy right here, fish it super fast and cover a bunch of water and catch fish doing that. They'll still chase it. They like to react to that twitching action. They think it's a dying bait fish and they will chase it and attack. Well, in the wintertime, a lot of baits, something like a chatterbait or something like that, you can only fish it slower. You can just reel it slower and it can still work, but it's not something that you can literally vary the retrieve and make it look different. So in the winter, shad start to die off when that water gets cold. Other bait fish will too. Perch, bluegill, all kinds of bait fish will start to die off. They're small, weak, they can't make it through the winter. What will happen is they'll kind of just shimmy along and then kind of like dart a little bit or twitch, and that's what their action looks like. So while you might have shad spawning in May and you can fish a jerkbait really fast and imitate those shad swimming everywhere, in the winter you can take the same bait, maybe alter it a little bit in color or the way it suspends or sinks, or even a deep diving version, and just fish it slower. So what I like to do in the winter time is incorporate longer pauses in my bait, and it will look more like those dying bait fish. So you can give it even gentler twitches. Instead of hitting it like a jerkbait and making it dart really erratic and wide, you can just give it light twitches with your wrist, and that bait will just kind of twitch a little bit this way, twitch a little bit this way, and just sit there or sink or do something like that. And that's what that action is this time of year. So rule of thumb, when you're fishing a jerkbait in the winter, as the water gets colder, you want to fish the bait slower and incorporate longer pauses. There comes a point where it's literally too long to sit there and hold a jerkbait. You will catch fish doing it. I've caught them ice out in ponds up here in the Northeast where you're sitting there for 30 seconds just holding your line, watching it, and all of a sudden it'll just kind of take off. Problem is, in a pond that's really easy. There's not a lot of water, not a lot of places those fish can live, especially when it's cold. You kind of know exactly where those fish are. On a big lake, if you're fishing Kentucky Lake, there's thousands of acres of water for those fish to be. So unless you know exactly where those fish are sitting and can give it those gentle twitches and let it sit there for 30 seconds, a minute, give it a couple more gentle twitches and let it sit there. You might have wind blowing your boat down the bank and pulling the jerkbait with you. If that line starts to pull and that jerkbait's just kind of moving like this but not making any action, doesn't look natural, it's very hard as that water gets too cold to be able to keep doing that. So I usually don't go more than 30 seconds. 30 seconds is about the longest I'd let a jerkbait sit there. Usually, if the water is above 60 degrees, I'm less than 5 seconds. Way less than 5 seconds, sometimes 1 or 2. If it's 50 to 45-ish degrees, that's when I'm going to go like 5 to 15 seconds. That's all you really need. If those fish are going to come up, they're going to slowly work their way up to that jerkbait anyway. If it's colder than 45 degrees, that's when you really have to let that jerkbait sit there for 15 to 30 seconds if you're going to get bites. Those fish are slow. Bait fish are slow. Nothing is moving quickly in the water. So if you're moving that jerkbait and you're twitch, hard twitches, and then let it sit for 3 seconds and 2 hard twitches again, they know that's not natural, and they know they're not even going to come look at that. But if you give it a couple gentle twitches and maybe only let it sit there for 15 seconds, it might not be the longest pause, but they can tell that that's a natural movement, and they'll slowly start to work their way up because they know it's an easy meal. If that jerkbait's not running away from them very fast, they will slowly come up off the bottom or wherever they're sitting. If the water's clear, they'll come from a long way away. They might not bite it on those first couple twitches. You might twitch it a couple times, they'll come up and look at it, and then you twitch it a couple more times and they'll follow it. If you've ever fished a fluke in the summertime and you have fish, you'll twitch it and they react really fast but then don't bite it. Then you twitch it again and they'll react really fast and don't bite it. the same thing's happening with your jerkbait, you just can't see it. So that's the way I like to fish my jerkbaits in the winter. Let's talk a little bit about color and setup to make sure you can catch more fish as well. So when it comes to my setup, if you notice, this is my same swim bait setup. If you follow my channel for a while, that's all I fish it on. My light swim bait setup is what I like to use. This is a 6'9" light medium heavy from Kistler. It's a helium and it's rated for 12 to 14 pound test. Pretty much your basic medium action, medium light, or medium heavy, somewhere in there is what you're looking for. So a medium action rod is really what I like. These ones are nice because they have a little bit more backbone, but they have a very soft, fast tip, so I can work that jerkbait. An extra fast tip would work even well, but in that colder water, I actually like the fast tip better, just because you won't put too much action into the bait. The extra fast tip doesn't bend as much, so the slightest twitch is going to put a lot more action into your bait. The other thing you need to do, I fish fluorocarbon, especially in the winter. So this is 12 pound test fluorocarbon. You could go down to 10 if you want. You could go down to 8 if you want. You'll get some deeper depth on your bait, but that lighter line test might alter the suspending action of your jerkbait. So 12 pound test, 10 pound test, most jerkbaits will suspend out of the package when that happens and you use that line. If you go down to 8, you might get some jerkbaits that start to sink a little bit in some colder water, which is okay. You want your jerkbait to either slowly sink or suspend. If your jerkbait's floating when you pause it, you need to add some weight to it or do something with your line to get it to suspend anytime in the winter. If your jerkbait's floating, you need to fix it. You will not get as many bites if your jerkbait floats in the wintertime. And then I have a 7 2-to-1 SLX DC on here. Reel really doesn't matter. You're just picking up line with it. You could even use a 6 gear ratio if you really want to slow down. All you want to do is make sure you're not pulling your jerkbait with the reel. You want to reel up your slack, but you don't want to pull the jerkbait. So don't pull all the coils out of your line. Just pull it tight enough that when you twitch it again, you'll actually be able to twitch the bait and not your slack. Less is more in the winter. If you pull even less coils out and you go to twitch it and you might not feel that bait on the end, you might not pulled enough of the coils out or enough of the slack out, you go to twitch it and it doesn't feel like the bait did anything on the end, that's that light twitch that's just a gentle dart and looks even more natural. So you might not feel like you're doing it right, but that's going to get you more bites if you're not pulling the bait with the reel. So very important there. And then lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about jerkbaits and color selection. There's 2 jerkbaits that I really like. You got to have a shallow one and you got to have a deep one. It depends on where you're fishing. If you fish ponds, I like the shallow one. I fish a lot of ponds and the shallow jerkbait's excellent. If you fish a lot of deeper, clearer places, the deep jerkbait works exceptionally well. In the wintertime, I'm fishing a lot of bluff walls, steep points, stuff like that, so that deeper jerkbait will get down to where the fish actually are. You can't fish this in a pond as much because the water's not deep enough and you'll get hung up. You want the jerkbait to be above the fish. So if you're fishing these jerkbaits right here, this is the 6th Sense Provoke, the shallow diving. This one will go about 4 foot deep. So if you're fishing anything deeper, like a pond, if you're fishing a pond, you can put this on heavier pound test and get it up higher and less diving depth if you need that. But most ponds, a 4 foot diving jerkbait will handle that just fine. If you're fishing anything up to about 8 foot of water, that's the one I'm going to go with. And then this guy right here is the Provoke DD. This one will get down to about 8 foot. So if I'm fishing anything from 10 or deeper, that's when I'm going to go with this guy right here. Like I said, you want it above the fish. You want them to come up for it. If you're hitting the bottom, it's going way too deep and it's not going to look natural. When it comes to color selection, I keep it really simple. I have a ghost color for some clearer water, any type of ghost shad pattern. I will have a more natural shad pattern that's opaque. You can't see through it. That will be for a little bit more stained water. And then on some very dirty water, I will like a bone white or a pearl white like this guy right here. And then if you have smallmouth or spotted bass, I've talked about this one in a ton of my videos. This color is called Wabi Sabi. It has that chartreuse belly. That will draw them smallmouth up from very deep. They love that chartreuse belly for some reason. If I'm fishing a smallmouth fishery, these other colors will work, but for some reason, this one will catch more. Don't know why it is. They really like that color. Now, I am sponsored by 6th Sense. They are great jerkbaits. I've fished with them. They're excellent. If you'd like to support the channel, use my code Quince on the website. You will save 10% off your order. There are a couple other jerkbaits that I really like as well. That you don't have to just use those ones right there. The other ones that I really like for this time of year, you'll notice every jerkbait I have for this time of year has 3 hooks on it. That's very important. The 3 hook jerkbaits, not only are you going to have a better chance of hooking a fish that nips at it, those 3 hook jerkbaits are also going to have way less action in the water. If you have one like an X-Rap or a Lucky Craft pointer that has 2 hooks, they dart a lot. You don't have to put a lot of action into them and they will dart. So that is going to look unnatural. These ones have a little bit more of a glide and a slow dart. That's going to catch you more fish. Everybody knows the Megabass Vision 110 and 110 plus ones. They're excellent. They will catch fish. They're a little bit pricey. The one thing I don't like about them, their hooks are very thin. I tend to horse fish a little bit. I put a little heat on them, and those hooks are so thin that you'll bend them out. But if you add any different hooks on there, I haven't found one yet that quite gets it to suspend the same. So then you'll start to have a sinking jerkbait, and like I said, when you're hitting the bottom, it's not going to work very well. So if you have one that sinks a little too fast, even if you're letting it sit there for 30 seconds, it's going to get way too close to the bottom. These guys right here come with triple grips right out of the package, and they're a little bit thicker, so those hooks won't bend out as easily. My other favorite that I absolutely love, caught a ton of fish on this bait right here. Only the deep version, the shallow version only goes like 2 foot, but if you fish in some really shallow ponds, could work for you, is the Rapless Shadow Rap Deep. This one actually catches a ton of fish as well. Love this bait, and they're pretty affordable, just like these 6th Sense jerkbaits. I think they're both in the same ballpark range on price. Excellent jerkbait as well. So go ahead and grab yourself some of those jerkbaits and get yourself a nice rod to fish some jerkbaits. I'm sure you probably already have one, a basic medium. Anything you fish a topwater on would be an excellent jerkbait rod. Put some fluorocarbon on there and get out there and catch some fish. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you'd like to see another video talking about some jerkbaits, go ahead and check this video out right here. Some other tips that will help you catch some more fish as well. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss any more of my fishing videos coming up. Leave a like if you enjoyed today's video, and thanks for watching.